The First World War was as much a battle of logistics as it was for dominance, peace and righteousness. And at this period in time, the greatest logistical system in play both on the continent and in the UK were the railway lines. Out on the front lines, light, maintainable arteries of supplies were formed from narrow gauge railway lines, able to take armaments, medical products and sustenance to the soldiers in the trenches. So integral were these networks and the other railways that the Great War could equally be described as the Railway War. To stock these narrow gauge lines snaking behind the trenches, fleets of locomotives and wagons had to be made to handle the wartime goods. After the war, these were sold off to various lines across Europe, as the stock of wagons and engines was deemed surplus to requirements. Following a second global conflict, and a good amount of luck and enthusiast admiration, a lot of wartime narrow gauge stock has survived into the preservation era, and is a common sight across preserved narrow gauge heritage lines in the UK. Following a recent trip to the Apedale Valley Light Railway, which has something of a specialism in wartime rolling stock, I grabbed these two examples which have been produced in the growing range of 009 ready to run stock by Bachmann. I picked up a covered ambulance wagon from Kernow Model Centre on sale, reduced from £38.95 to only £18.99. I also picked up this Class D long open wagon from the Bluebell Railway at the more expensive price of £27.95. Both are in the War Department grey livery, as preserved on the Leighton Buzzard and Apedale railways, and the ambulance wagon's code is 393-025A, and the open wagon is 393050A. Both come in the standard Bachmann narrow gauge boxes with plastic inserts. Let's start with the ambulance wagon, which has a fairly simple but evenly applied livery. The War Department grey dominates the body, bogies and underframe, with the running number decals and War Department lettering offering a small dab of yellow. These decals are very neatly applied with crisp edges all round. Even the builder's plate below has legible text denoting this is coming from the Gloucester Railway Carriage and Wagon Works. There is plenty of moulded detailing on the bogie, including the rivet, leaf springs and brake pads, an acceptable way to include these on such a small wagon. The wagon ends also feature some doors, along with a handbrake wheel mounted on each bogie. I've not found any photos online showing that these handles are coloured differently or are painted in the same grey, so I'm assuming there's no paint detailing missing off these. As my narrow gauge Cetrac loop is the equivalent of end gauge first radius, I'm hoping these handbrake wheels don't foul the twisting of the bogies when it comes to going around those tight curves. We'll see whether this happens later on. Once again we have the standard 009 hook and loop couplings, looking less overbearing on this than on the slate wagons I reviewed recently, helped no doubt by the larger size of this covered wagon. Underneath we can see that besides the chassis framing, there is no other underside detail on this. The metal axles fit into slots in the bogies. The wagon's side doors have moulded diagonal bracing atop the plankwork, and from this angle we can see that the two door handles are in fact separately fitted and made of wire, leaving a small gap on the inside between them and the door. One thing I commend this wagon on is continually surprising me. There is no detail sheet with this, so I was surprised to find the doors actually slide open to reveal a fully detailed interior inside. At first I thought it was just the detailed wooden flooring, but on closer inspection I realised that the end doors also open as well, letting you see through the wagon from end to end. Opening all the doors revealed more detailing inside, including some painted stretchers mounted to the inside walls, on which injured soldiers would have been carried for treatment away from the front lines. I had no idea the wagon had these features when I purchased it, so it was all a pleasant surprise and really added value to what I paid for this. Having made all these discoveries, I was quite blown away, and it's actually become one of my favourite 009 wagon models. Now, let's look at the Class D open wagon, though I'm sad to report this one was nowhere near as impressive as the ambulance wagon. The bogies appear identical to those on the ambulance van, so we won't dwell on them here. The wagon body features the same grey livery, but the decals aren't up to scratch. There's some minor damage to them visible, as well as some blemishes to the paintwork on one side of the wagon. The wagon body itself also features exclusively moulded detail, with no separately fitted chains or handles. While there is a planking effect inside the wagon, I'm troubled here by the absence of a wagon load. These were included in the slate wagon pack I looked at, and a quick search online in the Bachmann spares inventory reveals a limescale wagon load is available for this exact wagon, code 393050. Why this is sold separately and not included with the wagon as sold, as has happened with other wagons, is actually quite baffling, and detracts from the value of this wagon overall. Once again, underneath there is no detail beyond the chassis framing. On the whole, this is at the opposite end of the spectrum to the ambulance wagon. It costs me more, lacks the novelty features and details, even the basic ones such as a wagon load, and has some minor finish defects that ruin the decoration once you notice it. Hopefully this can redeem itself on the track, and who knows, may even outperform the ambulance wagon should that one falter. On the scales, the covered ambulance wagon comes in at a hefty 35 grams, almost 6 times heavier than the empty slate wagons I looked at. By contrast, the Class D long wagon comes in at a mere 15 grams, despite costing me £10 more. How much weight and additional load would add to this eludes me as it wasn't included. On straight and level track, the ambulance van is nice and free rolling, despite its hefty weight for a 009 wagon. The open bogie wagon was also nice and free running, without any obvious resistance on the axles, though without a load it's not clear whether this will change once there is a load inside it. Next up, testing the couplings. I had some issues with the Bachmann slate wagons not coupling to my Kato prints, so let's see if these do any better. Nothing seems to be coupling up this time. Let's try again. No dice. Neither of the wagons wants to couple together freely. Let's try the other end. The Kato prints has failed to couple, again, as have the wagons. The loops both seem to rise up and block each other from landing over the hooks. Angling and a helping hand seems to have done the trick. Getting them to couple to prints by hand wasn't easy, but in the end I managed it without derailing the wagon bogies. They've decoupled.
He's dropped them again.
The link between the wagons seems solid now, but the Kato couplings have failed to hold. Let's recouple and try that again. Oh, for God's sake. You know what? In the interest of getting these wagons to the points for testing, I'm just going to have Prince push them. Despite being shunted around the board, the wagons are running perfectly fine. They're not derailing on any of the sets of points on the running loop. And they have no issues with the front baseboard join. One thing I've realised is the Kato Prince has now actually coupled to the wagons properly after shunting them around the board. I'm not sure when this happened, but let's see if the coupler drops again when pulling the wagons. If not, hopefully we'll be able to get the same test performed with the wagons in tow this time. They're fine over the point work, and again fine over the baseboard join. Coupling issues aside, which may or may not be down to the Kato couplers again, the wagons run perfectly fine when you get them going on a train. On to my final verdict, starting with the covered van. Decoration. This is on the simpler side, but is even and well applied. The decals add a small splash of colour and are expertly applied. Fully legible down to the builder's plates, which is awesome to see on a narrow gauge wagon. Despite the simplicity, I'm really happy with this. Details and features. This is where this wagon really shines. Complete with sliding doors on all sides, interior detailing and furniture. There was a lot more here to admire than I anticipated. The separately fitted door handles as well were a neat touch. The wagon's features left a clear and lasting impression that reset my expectations. Quality. Once again, this is mostly plastic, owing to the small locos that will be pulling these. Still, it comes in at a very decent weight for what you pay relative to the slate wagons I reviewed recently, and I didn't pick up any quality issues of note. Really happy with this. Performance. Coupling issues aside, which may or may not be down to manufacturing or material differences between Bachmann and Kato/Pico, there was nothing wrong with this wagon's running once it was coupled up. It was a tad finicky with coupling to the open wagon at first, but held thereafter. On balance, I'm happy with how this performed. And finally, on to price. The retail price being almost £40 did raise my eyebrows at first. Though now I've thoroughly explored the wagon inside and out, it started to make more sense. Having the interior detail and sliding doors would have made this more complicated to manufacture, explaining some of the cost. At the price I got this for, at 50% off, I'm really chuffed with just how much I got for my money here. It's gone from feeling reasonably priced at half price to feeling like quite the bargain. I'm 100% happy with what I paid for this, and if I'd known about the bells and whistles up front, I might have been happy to pay a little more. That's a solid 5 out of 5, making this a top-notch piece of rolling stock that's going to become a staple of my layout, both on show as a static piece or in a train. With all the features I've found, I've started to understand the RRP of this one more, but I'm still glad I got it at the price I did. It exceeded expectations in every way. And now onto the Class D open wagon. For decoration, the application of the grey livery here is nice and even as it was on the ambulance van, as are the coloration and crispness of the decals. I'm going to penalise the blemishes and decal damage in the quality criterion, but on the whole I'm happy with how the livery is presented. I'll award this the point for decoration. For details and features, I wasn't expecting a barrage of opening doors or separately fitted parts here, but the model relying 100% on moulded details for the main body makes this feel like it doesn't have much going for it. The absence of a load when one has been designed and produced is quite the shocker. Why on earth is it sold separately at an additional cost and not included as standard? To me, that makes it lacking a key feature, one thing that would have added to this otherwise featureless model. Knowing there is a load out there and that it has been produced separately makes this criterion unfortunately dead on arrival for me. Quality. The materials and construction are sound. However, the blemishes to the paintwork and damaged decals are unfortunate. Had this been visible from the box when I purchased, I'd have passed over this wagon. It may be minor compared to other quality issues that could occur, but ultimately I'm not happy the damage is there, and once it's seen it can't be unseen. The bottom line is I wouldn't have purchased this had this been visible, so I'm not awarding it the point. For performance, coupling problems aside, this was faultless, as was the performance for the ambulance van. That, if nothing else, is a testament to the bogies attached to these. I'm happy with how it performed. And finally, on to price. And while £27.95 is less than the ambulance van's retail price, with the missing load and decal damage, I'm not happy with what I received for what I paid. I'd expect the decal application to be pristine on a wagon costing almost £30, and for a load to be included at that price, not excluded to form an additional expense. That and the lack of other features makes this feel more like a Bachmann rip-off than a worthwhile purchase. Overall, that's a measly 2 out of 5. Which means that this is probably only worth getting if you can find it at a bargain price. Bachmann have dropped the ball here, especially compared to the other 009 wagons I've looked at. It wouldn't have killed them to include the load they specifically make for this wagon, like they did with the slate trucks, instead of selling it separately at an additional expense. It runs fine, but has disappointed me elsewhere, and I wish I'd paid a price more in line with the ambulance van. Overall, this pair of wagons is a mixed bag, with the highest of highs but also some disappointment. You can't win them all, but I'm happy with the ambulance van at least. So what do you think about these War Department wagons? Were you aware the covered van had as many features as it did? Let me know in the comments below. That's all from me today, but I'll be sure to see you in another video very soon. Take care.